So, what is going on, guys? I am Black Amazing. Welcome back to another zombies video where today we are going to be talking about the Tranzit crew and whether or not they died after Blood of the Dead. I've had a ton of people asking me in the comments what has happened to the Tranzit crew, otherwise known as Victis or Misty, Samuel, STUHLINGER and Malton. The last time they were seen was in Richtofen's lab, but as we know, in the ending for Blood of the Dead, the Alcatraz universe was collapsed. And so what happened to these characters? What does this mean for them? Are they dead? Are they still alive? But anyway, as always, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you drop a like rate, and of course it's always appreciated, but you don't have to if you don't want to. It's up to you guys. Make sure you also subscribe to stay up to date with the latest zombies videos, but let's get into it. Here we go. So the Tranzit crew, otherwise known as the Victis characters, were first introduced to us in Green Run. We know that they all had their own backgrounds. Russman worked for Broken Arrow, Samuel was a part of the Flesh. We don't really know too much about Malton and Misty's background. We do know that Malton was a computer engineer and Misty lived on a farm, but all four of these characters were survivors on Earth after the 3 rockets hit from the moon. And so we know in Black Ops 2 Zombies, Richtofen, who was in control of the zombies, and also Maxis, who was an AI rendered being, they both contacted survivors on Earth. These survivors were the Tranzit crew, and they asked them to activate the 3 polarization devices in their favour, and the crew activated all of the devices for Maxis. They went to Green Run, where they activated the pylon there for Maxis, not Richtofen. They then went to Die Rise, where they activated the 2nd pylon for Maxis, and then in Buried, they activated the 3rd and final polarization device for Maxis, and when they did that, they learned that Maxis had actually tricked them. All this time, he'd been telling them that if they do this favour for him, the world will be healed, they will be safe, but it turned out that actually his plan all along was to overpower Richtofen and take his power from him, which is what he did. He then entered the ether, which gave him control over the zombies. He plucked Samantha's soul out of Richtofen's body from the moon, so they were reunited, and then he told the Tranzit crew that they will not survive, that he was going to destroy the Earth and the dimension that they are in. But as we know, just before he could do that, another version of Richtofen, it was actually this one that we see in the Blood of the Dead intro cutscene on the left, Primus Richtofen opened up a rift for the Tranzit crew and Buried, allowing them to escape, meaning they wouldn't be killed, but he then sent them on a quest to collect the Canorium. As we know, he sent them to different places in different facilities, doing this all whilst being chased by undead Richtofen, where they finally arrived at a place called the Empty Earth. This was somewhere where another version of Maxis had built a facility to house and protect the Canorium. This was where the Canorium was being protected by cyborg zombies. The Tranzit crew came here, they collected the Canorium, and they then left and were teleported back to the Mob of the Dead lab, to Alcatraz, to hand it over to Primus Richtofen. And so that's what they did. They gave Primus Richtofen the Canorium, and he then gave them 2 choices. Richtofen said to the Tranzit crew, either you can go off on your own and try to survive, I could place you somewhere, but everywhere is equally as bad, it's all infested by zombies, or the second option he gave them was to place them on ice, in stasis, locked in chambers, where they would be kept safe, and he told them he would awaken them when he finds a perfect world that is safe for them. And as we can see in Blood of the Dead, that is the option they chose. And so Richtofen placed them on ice, where he has kept them safe until he needed them again. And so that explains why the Tranzit crew are in these stasis chambers in Blood. They went on this giant quest for Primus Richtofen, and after they finished, because there was nowhere safe for them to go, he's kept them on ice, and he told them he will awaken them when everything is fine. However, we know everything isn't fine. In fact, the whole storyline, the whole timeline has messed up. All of a sudden, the Canorium changed, the future changed, which meant that things weren't gonna go according to plan. And as we see in the Blood of the Dead intro, Primus Richtofen, the one that was supposed to be looking after the Tranzit crew, the one that told them that he will awaken them when he needs them again, well, he just disappeared. He left Alcatraz, not to be seen again. And as we see by the Blood of the Dead ending, Primus Richtofen has to sacrifice his blood in order to break the cycle, which allows Nikolai, Takeo and Dempsey to escape Alcatraz, along with post-Revelations Richtofen, so they leave. Primus Richtofen dies, he bleeds out. He not only uses his blood to break the cycle, but it is also used to collapse the Alcatraz dimension. And as we see by the ending, he dies. And so we're left wondering then, well, what has happened to the Tranzit characters? If there is no one left in Alcatraz, and then right at the end, this dimension gets collapsed, well, what does that mean for the fate of the Tranzit crew? Does that mean they're gonna die here as well? Because remember, they're still stuck on ice down in Richtofen's lab in stasis chambers. They're stuck down there in those pods. No one seemed to bother with them. No one is left alive in this dimension. And then in the end anyway, it gets collapsed. So what does this mean for these characters? Are they dead? Well, you would think that, however, it doesn't really make sense. There is a radio in Classified that I believe is very important to the storyline. It is from STUHLINGER and he's making contact with Richtofen.
Richtofen! Hey, Richtofen! You've been gone from my head a really long time. I gotta be honest, I'm freaking out a bit, man. It's so quiet. I can actually hear myself think. Do you know what that's like? It's not nice at all. So, listen, buddy, old pal, we gotta talk. You sent us here, of all places, but you forgot to tell us what to do. It's dark, it's damp, it's just really filthy. I think the roaches are crawling with roaches. How is that even possible? Wait, shoot, am I even talking to the right Richtofen? Oh, you could be the other one, right? Or the other one. Yeah, you know what? Just go talk to your Richtofen pals at the hoity-toity Ricky Gang Clubhouse and find out what the we're supposed to be doing!
So you can see he says, Richtofen, you've been gone from my head for a really long time. I'm gonna be honest, I'm freaking out a bit. It's so quiet. He says, so listen, buddy old pal, we've gotta talk. You sent us here of all places, but you forgot to tell us what to do. It's dark, it's damp, it's really filthy. I think the roaches are crawling with roaches. He then says, wait, shoot, am I even talking to the right Richtofen? It could be the other one, right? Or the other one. You know what? Just go talk to your Richtofen pals at the Ricky Gang at the Ricky Gang Clubhouse and find out what the hell we're supposed to do. So this is important because it seems like this radio was recorded after Blood of the Dead, because Samuel mentions him knowing about other Richtofens. Samuel only ever knew of one version of Richtofen up until he arrived at Alcatraz. They only ever knew that one version of Richtofen existed, and they didn't even know what he looked like. It was only when they finally arrived at the prison to give Richtofen the Canorium, that's when they met him for the first time. He read the Canorium in front of them. He told them a little bit about what it says, about how he killed himself many times, about how this doesn't end well for him, and other stuff like that. He mentions other versions of himself. This was the first time that the Tranzit crew ever heard anything about this, and then literally seconds later, he then put them on ice in these chambers in Alcatraz. So they never had a chance to go anywhere else. Which means if Samuel knows about other Richtofens, this radio must have been recorded after Blood of the Dead, because before it, he never knew about multiple Richtofens, and obviously during the time of Blood, he was trapped in the stasis chambers all that time. Their pods were never thawed out, so they were trapped there, which could only leave us with one option, right? If Samuel has managed to record this radio after Blood, he must have managed to escape. Somehow, maybe someone must have thawed out the Victis crew's stasis chambers, allowing them to escape. And as Samuel says, he's trying to make contact with Richtofen again because he hasn't heard from him for a very long time. And he says, am I even talking to the right Richtofen? And the answer is, he isn't. He's contacting the wrong Richtofen because he's talking to the one we are playing as in Classified. He's talking to the Ultimus Richtofen. Samuel relied on this voice in his head for so long. He relied on Richtofen telling him what to do during this whole zombie outbreak, and now that Richtofen's voice is not there anymore, Samuel sounds desperate. He doesn't know what to do, and so he's trying to make contact with Richtofen again, but he's contacted the wrong one. Of course, he doesn't know that. In fact, he doesn't know which Richtofen to contact. It's also interesting that he says, "Listen, Richtofen buddy, we gotta talk. You sent us here of all places, but you forgot to tell us what to do. It's dark, it's damp, it's really filthy. Where exactly could STUHLINGER be? Could he be describing the prison now that it's closed off? We see in the ending, just as Primus Richtofen bleeds out, everything shuts down, it turns black and white, the power looks like it goes out. Is Samuel, along with the rest of the crew, now trapped in the laboratory in Alcatraz? But obviously, because Richtofen's died and the power's gone out, it's dark, it's gone damp because there's no life on there anymore, it's filthy, we don't exactly know how long after the dimension collapse that they've been here, because, well, that would kind of make sense. If the transit crew was stuck down in the laboratory on ice, well, when Richtofen bled out and the Alcatraz dimension closed, the power on the prison shut down, everything just turned off. Eventually, because there's nothing to keep the transit crew's stasis chambers running anymore, that means quickly they would have thawed out, the transit crew would have awoken, and they would now be trapped in Richtofen's laboratory in the complete dark. It'd be damp, it'd be wet, it'd be just as he's describing. Could he be potentially recording this radio, this message, in Alcatraz now that the dimension is closed? I think that could be very possible. It is interesting though, the fact that he says, "You sent us here of all places," makes it sound like Richtofen has sent the transit crew to another place. But surely that can't have happened because, well, we never see that happen in the Easter egg, and at the ending, like I've said, the dimension closes, so no one can come in or out of Alcatraz, which means that, you know, another version of Richtofen can't have come in and just sent them somewhere else, right? I think this pretty much shows that this radio has to have been recorded after Blood of the Dead, which means that at this time, the transit crew were still alive. The question is, of course, well, what's going to happen to them? Are they just going to stay here and eventually die, whether they starve or something, or will they find a way to escape and somehow Treyarch will implement them into our storyline again? Maybe we can play as them again in the future, I don't know. And this also brings up the question, well, if they're trapped in Alcatraz, and we also know that dead Richtofen is in Alcatraz, well, what if they find him and somehow manage to revive him? What if the transit crew revive dead Richtofen in Alcatraz, and then he teams up with them, they escape and go on their own little mission to do something, whether that's to defeat Dr. Monty, or maybe he now wants to get revenge on Primus, Nikolai, Takio and Dempsey for leaving him behind, letting him die. I don't know. There's a load of possibilities, but it's definitely interesting. Richtofen did say that he would keep the Victis crew safe on ice until he needed them next. Obviously, plans changed, and so things didn't go exactly to plan, but for all of the storyline building that Treyarch have done with the transit crew over the past year, with the comics, and then going through all of that trouble to keep them safe in the laboratory, to have them just die out, I don't know if I can really see that happening. So I do think we might be seeing the transit crew once again in the future. I feel like, and of course this is just what I feel, it could be totally different, they could just die, but I feel like, since it seems like Samuel, at least, we don't hear from the other characters, is alive, and I believe they are trapped in Alcatraz, although it could be in another location, they may find a way to escape. Whether they're going to do that for themselves, or another Richtofen's going to help them out, although how that's going to happen I'm not sure, because this is now a closed dimension. There's so many questions and ways that this could go, it's really hard to predict, but those are my ideas and what I think. Let me know yours in the comment section below. So there we go. Hopefully you have enjoyed the video. If you have, a like rating of course would be appreciated. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel, and of course I will see you all in the next one. Until then, goodbye.